Chad Holbrook, welcome to the Preconstruction Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good, man. Thanks for coming on. Chad, just for the listeners and the audience that don't know you, give us a quick intro.
So I'm the director of VDC for W.E O'Niel in the Chicago office. We're a national general contractor. We have offices all over the country. But my role is to, bring VDC and BIM and, innovation to our company, whether that means laser scanning, drones, AI, all that kind of cool stuff, all the toys. That's what my role is with my company.
Very good, good. And then if we can take you back to your degree days, computer graphics degree. Give us an idea of how that came about, and then your path into VDC.
Right. So I'm a Boilermaker. I went to Purdue University, and I do have a degree in computer graphics. So it's I've been around construction since I was probably 15, 16 years old, and my grandfather was a woodworker. So I've always been around the crafts and the trades. So, when I went to school, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I thought I wanted to be an architect. I quickly found out that wasn't for me, and kind of stumbled into computer graphics, where I learned everything from web design, logo design, all the way to, manufacturing graphics. And, my school was one of the first beta tests for Revit, well before Autodesk even had their hands on it. So,
Wow.
So yeah, I've been using Revit for quite some time, learned how that all worked. And then, a few years out of school, I stumbled into this. So,
Very good.
That's kind of how I ended up here.
Good, man. And Purdue, during your degree, did you touch on Revit, or did you know Revit?
We were a beta tester for it when it was RTC, which was the original founding company, and that was back in 99, 2000. I remember getting the CD-ROM with the cheap printed label on it that said beta, version 1.0. So yeah, we were a beta testing for Revit, and it's changed a lot since those days.
It'd be nice to see a CD-ROM with that on it, wouldn't it, again?
I've looked for it all over the place. I don't know. I must have gotten rid of it at some point.
It'll turn up. If you're anything like me and my family, we're hoarders, so I can't wait to go through it in 10 years and see what I find. Good. So I mean, Revit, and that's one of the biggest topics that we're going to discuss, because I want to get into that in more detail. But especially Revit, after your degree, give us a quick idea of the next 5, 6, 7 years, and how you got into full-blown VDC and BIM, because I'm sure, like all of us, during college, you don't really know what you want or what you want to do. Right. You almost got to test the water with as many things as you can, and then you find a nice little kind of niche that kind of turns your head and goes, you know what? I would love to do that for the rest of my life.
Right. Yeah, so right out of school, I became a truss designer of all things. I didn't have a degree or any knowledge of anything structural, but I did know a specific piece of software, and it wasn't Revit, unfortunately. And then, I kind of went from different job to different job because it was around September 11th. So my startup company kind of ended up being like a 6 months internship, so to speak. But, I got into IT, and I was like, IT's not really for me. And believe it or not, a buddy that I grew up with and went to college with, he reached out and said, hey, I'm a joint venture with this big company, and we're building this hospital right across the street from where you live. Would you be interested? And I'm like, we need a 3D modeler. I said, sure. So, that's how I got back into it. So I went in and interviewed and showed him how I knew how to use Revit and SketchUp and all these different things. And that's how I kind of stumbled back into the BIM VDC thing, because when I was in school and Revit existed back in those days, that wasn't, BIM wasn't really a key term, right? It didn't exist at that time. So they're like, hey, now you're a BIM guy. I'm like, okay. I had to Google what BIM meant. I had no idea.
That was the start of it.
Right.
Yeah. Brilliant, because I mean that gives you an idea of not the fortunate experience of being into it, but it just gives you an idea of throwing yourself at something. But I would imagine Revit and SketchUp, even at that time, there was little adoption. It was kind of very, very, very new. Within the hospital project that you discussed, give us an idea of how you use it and what your role was.
My role was the BIM coordinator. I worked for Mortenson at that time, and they basically threw me on the job and said, hey, here's the structural concrete foundations and footings, and we need to remodel this. And what we did was we created, I think they called them IWPs, integrated work plans. So that, but they basically what they were was they were the concrete pours cut up into sections. So that what we would do is we would send out just a section of the foundation walls to the job team. So they knew that they poured from point A to point B on that day. We had done all the calculations on how much concrete they needed for that day, how many embeds, how much rebar, all that kind of stuff. And it was all included on that one print, instead of them going through various different prints in order to figure out how to build that one specific pour. So that was kind of how we were utilizing Revit at that point in time. Now we didn't go back and recreate the structural, portions of the building or the architectural, but we did utilize Revit for those footings and foundation plans.
Brilliant. And I would imagine going on, especially Mortenson, the architects, the designers, the client, did you have to not sell them on the benefits of BIM or give them an idea? Because I think there's a good opportunity for us to give the listeners there, maybe the graduates or the junior people that are thinking BIM VDC, give them an idea of what BIM VDC is at a kind of a stupid level for me.
Right.
Because there will be a lot of BIM VDC experts out there who will listen to this, but for us people that are not up to speed with it, give us a quick overview.
Sure. So, BIM is building information modeling. It's basically taking a 3D model and adding, intelligence to it. So when you model, so like in Revit, for example, when you model a wall, you're in plan view, you're drawing this wall and it shows up as 4 lines. But when you go into 3D, there's 3D data there. And if you click on that wall, you can gather out, how much, you can take it to the point of finding out how many studs and how much drywall, how many, square foot of drywall and all this kind of stuff. So it's basically building intelligence into the model. So, I love SketchUp, so don't take this the wrong way, but SketchUp is not BIM, right? It's a bunch of lines and planes that are connected and kind of it's very powerful, but it doesn't really fit that bill. Revit does, although you can still build dumb models in Revit that don't have intelligence in them. But BIM has kind of in the industry's kind of gotten to that level of being like Kleenex, right? Every tissue is a Kleenex, right? So it's kind of gotten overused and washed out. So I think, and it's evolved a little bit. And I think that's where the VDC, the virtual design and construction, has come in, right? So, all the VDC guys tend to be the guys that play with all the toys, and nobody really knows what they do. They're the black ops guys, right? They're out flying drones and working with robotics and doing scanners and all that kind of stuff. So, I think we've some of us at least have transitioned away from that BIM persona to a more of a VDC and what construction technology, side of things. But it all is based out of that, the BIM, and it's just kind of continuing to evolve. And in another 5 years or whatever, we're going to be called something else.
Yeah, exactly. And how much of it is Revit? Because, I speak to, obviously, the engineer side of things. It's all Revit. But for someone like yourself running a team within a large general contractor, how much Revit do you need to know? How much Revit do you need to understand at a low level, at a high level? Do you need to be a Revit expert?
I don't know if you necessarily need to be a Revit expert, but I think you need to be at least familiar with it. For example, I hired an engineer out of school a couple of years ago, and I hired her from my old program because, one, she knew Revit and she was a go-getter, right? And so it was really beneficial that she knew Revit. And now I know when things come in our door that we need to supplement models or we need to create models from point clouds, I know I can lean on her to be able to do that because she's familiar with it. So I don't think that it's necessarily, you have to be an expert at it, but I think you need to be able to know enough to be able to get over the hurdles, but then also be curious enough to be able to explore and try out new things as well. I'll admit I'm not a Revit expert. People come to me all the time and say, "Hey, can you build this Revit family?" I'm like, "Hey, I don't know anything about families." And so you don't necessarily have to be an expert, because I think the reality is that most of us only use probably about 30% of what that program can do, and we're more than efficient at what we're performing our jobs.
Good. And now give me an example. This is a good topic. So that lady, or the young girl, the young modeler or Revit expert that come out of college, So she's 2 years in now. Give me an understanding of what happens on a day-to-day basis with the project for her. Do you receive the drawings from the engineers, the architect, and she remodels them and populates them? Or give me an idea of what her job would entail.
Right. So she's, her title is a VDC engineer. So, it can mean all kinds of things. Like right now she's leading the coordination on a job. So she's had to learn how to use Navisworks and how to run clash detection, how to kind of manage the process and all that kind of stuff. But on the Revit side of things, we've got a project that we went in and laser scanned the entire building because we had no as-builts. The drawings are not the greatest, and the building kind of jig-jogs all over the place. So it's kind of, there's no consistent, like, here's level 1, here's level 2. It kind of jumps up all over. So she'll go in and she'll take those drawings from an architect who has drawn this stuff up and model it based off what they've done, and then also cross-reference it from the point cloud and model off the point cloud. So, her day could be various different things, but she also knows graphics too. So, she's very versatile. She is able to come up with site logistics plans and those kinds of things. And then I have another VDC engineer that works for me who loves the multimedia, and he loves doing 3D renderings and animations and, those pump up videos that we, give out to owners and presentations. So, I think I've asked them all to be jack of all trades. I've even told them, I said, I don't want you guys to be a one-trick pony. I think you guys are good because you have your expertise in certain areas, but I also want you to be knowledgeable about what others are doing so that you can jump in and help when necessary.
Good. And how important is, if we're dealing with, and you're speaking to graduates that are thinking about a career in BIM VDC, how important is it to be up to speed with Revit or to be trained in Revit?
Mm-hmm. It's important to at least know, know the basics. Obviously you don't have to know all the ins and outs, but know the basics. How to model stuff, how to get views, how to export stuff out, how to go in and turn things on and off. And it probably goes a little bit deeper than that, but I definitely don't think somebody has to be, a Revit expert. I'm Revit certified, at least a couple versions ago. But and if I saw that on somebody's resume, it would definitely pique my interest for sure.
Very good. So give me an idea now of projects that you're working on right now and how important the BIM VDC is. Are you still, you've worked with some great companies, Mortenson, Kitchel, Barton Malow, and now you're with W.E O'Niel. How hard was it in adopting or promoting BIM and VDC within these companies? Was there different companies that liked it and didn't like it, and what are the challenges?
But it's kind of all over the place as far as like adoption, and some places, like Mortenson, for example, they're the leader, right? They're a leader in VDC and BIM, and they've got great leadership over there. I don't know that I would be in my career where I am now if I hadn't been part of that for a while. But there are organizations out there that struggle to implement these kinds of things. They just, some organizations just don't see the value, understand the value. And I'm not talking about any of the ones that I've worked for that you listed, but it's a mixed bag. It just depends on, how much your leadership has bought in, right? If you've got the mindset, like we've done it this way for 30, 40 years, we've been just fine. I think that mindset is eventually going to come back to bite you, because if you don't, I think I saw a statistic at one time. It was like for every 1 year you wait to implement some innovation in BIM, you're going to be 5 years behind the competition. And I really think that is true, right? You can't use the same tools today and expect, better outcomes in the future. So, it is important to embrace this. It is important that leadership understands the value. And I think that was one of the things that really enticed me, is that, to come to O'Niel, is that they said, hey, I've talked to them for years before they hired me. And I said, you really need to hire me. You really need a BIM VDC team. And finally they called me and said, hey, we're ready. We've got to do this. And so they brought me on, and, and I've been happy with how leadership has really embraced this and really wanted to push this to the limits.
Very good, because it was there no BIM department before you arrived?
We did a lot of our outsourcing. We worked with a local architect who we still work with today. And he was just kind of holding down the fort, as best he could with other things he had going on. And he was doing great things. I think the company just realized that it was time to bring it, somebody full time, so that we had a team that was really dedicated to this, because 6 months before I showed up, they bought 2 laser scanners to go out and do scanning. And then everybody was kind of like, so who's going to run this? They're like, we need a VDC guy. Yeah, right. We need a VDC guy to do this. So, they invested in some technology and didn't really know what to do with it. And I think it was just, they realized it was time, right? They were going into interviews and stuff, and their competition was just, putting out these things, and they're like, guys, we have to do this.
Yeah. I think that's where the penny drops. Listen, change is difficult for any construction company. It's difficult for any industry. But when you see your competition producing these beautiful models and just being able to sell so much easier, obviously they want to do that. But then, obviously, I would imagine you'd be an advocate for actually BIM VDC. That's a good part of it, probably about 10 or 15% of it. But actually, this is where the real value is. The better buildings, better coordination, better collaboration, being able to present investigation, reduce costs, mitigate risk. Whenever the penny dropped with W.E O'Niel and you said, yeah, the fancy buildings are nice and the models are nice, but actually this is what it can do to your bottom line.
Yes. And I think that's where it comes in. It's just not the pretty pictures, right? It's, we go into buildings, so we do a lot of renovations in Chicago. We do a lot of renovations of buildings that are built like in the 20s and 30s, right? So craftsmanship back then, I can't argue with it. It was amazing. You go into these buildings and the way these guys did things without the technology we have now is just outstanding. But their as-built skills were seriously lacking. So we go in and we had an owner who didn't want to pay for any technology. And I said, all right, but I think you really need it. And they're like, yeah, we don't want to pay for any of it. And I said, okay. So we went in, and on our own dime, we went in, spent the time, we scanned this place, we came up with an as-built model, and we were able to improve the coordination process, because they were just having struggles with it, because they were, the beams in the floor were said to be here and here and here. When we went in and scanned it, they all shifted a little bit. So we were able to fix that process. And afterwards, the owner was like, all right, now I get it, right? So it's, you don't always get those people who are like, yeah, we want to do this. But there's a value there, right? We go out and we buy drones, and everybody's like, oh, they got a new toy, right? But the idea is that there's an end game with this, right? We buy these things and we're like, okay, now let's find a way to utilize it, a way that we can benefit our processes and benefit our end product.
Yeah. And what's the exciting part for you right now when it comes to VDC? What's the thing that gets you out of bed and goes, you know what, I can't wait till this kind of improves or this adaptation comes along?
Lately I've really been excited about how prefabrication can really help our industry, especially with where we are right now. When I hate to be topical, but the whole COVID thing, right? I mean, the amount of people that we're having on job sites can be in the hundreds, if not thousands, depending on the size of the job. But if you prefab a lot of this stuff off site, you can actually put those people in an controlled environment in a warehouse or factory or whatever it might be to build those components, and then only put a handful of people on a job site to actually install that stuff. I really see, and I don't know if we're necessarily there yet as far as the technology goes and all the product providers, but I could really see that as being something that could really improve how we deal with job sites, and pandemics and stuff that we've got going on right now. Yeah. And then, the augmented reality or the artificial intelligence stuff that we've got coming out. There's providers out there that they'll take video and they'll give you a report back like, hey, you've got, instead of 4 ladders that you had on site last week, now you've got 24. I think your potential for accidents or incidents is going way up. You guys probably need to do, ladder safety, or, you've got all these guys huddled in this one space and they need to maintain 6 feet of distance. Maybe it's time to have a toolbox talk and say, hey guys, remember, we have to wear face masks and we have to be social distance and, those kinds of things. So, just the things that are coming out right now, it can be mind-boggling. You just kind of have to make sure that you keep your focus on what's important, and not get distracted by all the little pretty shiny things that are coming out all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's going to come to a stage now, and COVID's probably accelerated it, is the adaptation was pretty consistent over the last 5 years. It was going in the right direction, but it's kind of just accelerated. We've gone from third gear into fourth gear into fifth gear.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of COVID. Listen, I think it'll be good in the long term. Maybe 6 months, a year after COVID, there could be a little bit of teasing out what's beneficial and what's really can get a real return on investment.
Yeah, and we've had to, this has all forced us to look at things differently. Instead of us, when we go out to a job site walk before we're, presenting on a job, we used to send an army of guys, right? You send out 10 guys, you send out 2 superintendents, a project manager, and now they call us up and say, hey, grab the 360-degree camera and go out and document this site for us. So we're utilizing some 360-degree technology with our cameras, and we're going out and documenting this site with 1 or 2 people tops, and then putting it up on the cloud and sharing it out with our entire team. And now our entire team is familiar with the site, without having to put themselves in harm's way or whatever the case might be. So This has really forced us to change a lot of the ways that the way we approach things.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be the company as a whole is going to lean on you much more now,
yes.
And you're going to. So I mean, leaning on you much more will need under pressure, but you'll need a bigger team. But you mentioned that 360 camera on site. I mean, Spot is a thing that comes up quite a lot in this series of BIM VDC.
Yeah.
What a great tool he is. I mean, is that? Would you? I mean, the guys here in the office would actually like Spot in our office. Now, what he would do, I don't know, but they just want to look at him. So, would you be pushing for Spot? Can you see the benefits of him?
I see the benefits of them. When I first saw it at AU back in November or whatever, I walked around the corner and there's this little yellow dog, and I'm like, guys, it's over. It's happening. Robots are taking over, right? But now I see these case studies and I see these videos of what this thing can do, and it's really truly amazing. The one thing that I really struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of the technology guys struggle with, is the cost, right? Yeah. It's really hard to justify like the investment in some of these things. Even though there is a benefit on the other end, it takes a little bit of time to build up that case as to say, hey, if we spend this money, these are the benefits that come out of it, right? But yes, that thing, I've watched some videos, they're using it at a job site not too far from my house right now, and they post videos like every week, and I see this thing out there, and it's pretty cool what it can do. And I think the potential for it growing and becoming more norm on job sites is close. It's very close. Yeah,
it's exciting. It really is. I mean, hopefully it's like anything. Once it comes out at the beginning, the costs are high, but once we get a couple of competitors in there, we're hoping there'll be a cheap alternative or a few alternatives.
Right. Yeah. And we've started looking at other things too, because I've got somebody on my team who's really passionate about robotics, and so she's always hounding me to she wants to go build a robot so that she can do some of these things, kind of similar to what Spot is doing. So we're investigating some of that stuff, but again, our company is a little bit slower to kind of move in that direction. So it's striking that balance, right? We want to stay on the cutting edge, but not necessarily the bleeding edge. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's it. It's all about the balance, and there is a balance there, depending on what you do, what industries you work in, and the profit margin you're getting.
Yep.
So Chad, so I mean, to me, the future is BIM and VDC. I talked recently about the detail that's going into BIM and VDC. Is it a case, or how do you see the future of BIM VDC? Is it a case that the architect, the engineers, and the GCs are going to work off the same model, being able to look at the washers, the nuts, the bolts, the handles on doors? Is that the future of 5-10 years' time?
I think that's the euphoria where we want to get to, right? We have some architects who use Revit very well, use it to put in a great deal of information. And we have others who still give us AutoCAD drawings, or even worse yet, just PDFs. So we're actually getting ready to kick off some conversations with an architect that we have a very good relationship with. And then on the other side of things, a framer that we have a very good relationship with, and try to figure out and have the conversation like, hey, Mr. Architect, if you put this information in here, here's what I can do to pull that data out and get the owner a better quantity, a better price, and all that kind of stuff. And then on the other end, that information can then be transitioned to the framer, and it saves him X number of dollars and time. And so then, as they update it, then we can update, that whole ecosystem, that whole stream of data back and forth. So yeah, I think that that's the euphoria where we want to get, to have the architects be able to put in that information. Now, there is a point where too much information is too much information. I think that, in a wall, for example, we'd want like drywall and insulation and framing and that kind of stuff. We could get down to the point where we could say, hey, we have a formula that says this is how many screws go in this many square feet of drywall and that kind of stuff. But I don't know that our estimators want to spend that kind of time doing that kind of stuff. But to your point, yes, I think the more information that we're starting to get from our architects is paying dividends on our end, at least being able to get the owners a better price and a better schedule. Frankly, we can plan our construction process a little bit better if we had, that kind of information.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I always hear from BIM VDC guys and gals is the whole collaboration and communication thing. I mean, it's pretty evident that we talk about the three-legged stool, the client, the architect, and the GC. It's pretty evident that the more communication that we have, the better buildings that we can build and the safer the world is because of that. But if there's no real reason and other than time and money to put that detail in for the general contractor, I'm just trying to put myself in their shoes. Why should they do it? Because at the end of the day, and this is where I see it changing a little bit, the architects generally decide what the GC is and the owner. So I see it shifting. I see it that the general contractor is going to start picking the architect.
Yeah. And we're in situations where that is, a reality, where an owner says, hey, tell us what this thing looks like if we go down the traditional path, right, where we pick everybody, and then tell us what it looks like if you pick, these people. But the collaboration piece is huge, and I think we're slow to get there. And I think a lot of the reason that the information doesn't, all that data that you're talking about doesn't get into the architect's model is because they don't know at that point in time necessarily, when we're trying to put together budgets and schedules and stuff, they don't necessarily know, what the finish might be here, or, exactly how thick that wall might be. They have a general idea, but, some of the data is just not ready yet. But the collaboration that we're trying to, get going is that, hey, if we talk to you and tell you how we're going to use this information, can you put this stuff in there? And we've had great success with that. A lot of architects will be like, yeah, we can do that, because we don't ask for the world, right? We just ask for stuff that'll help us get over the hump. And because when we get the models, we have to pick it apart. We have to say, okay, yeah, our roofs really modeled as roofs, our floors really modeled as floors, because sometimes we get the opposite. And then, if we just spit out that data to our estimators and say, yeah, you've got X number of roofs, and they're like, well, that seems like double our amount. And then you go back in and you start looking and, oh, okay, well, they modeled a floor as a roof, or a roof as a floor. But so having those conversations in the front of the process, I think pays huge dividends at the end. And, what we do as VDC and BIM guys and women is that we try to bridge that gap. We try to create a process and a workflow, and it kind of goes back to that coordination, right? When we go into coordination, we approach it as a team environment. We're not in the room demanding this, demanding that. Our trades and our subs actually have say in our BIM coordination plan and our execution plan. So coordination is and collaboration is a big part of what we do, for sure.
Good. Yeah. Because then another kind of hot topic and buzzword is machine learning. I mean, what extent and when will we see machine learning within building these models or helping us out with these models? Obviously, the data is the key to all this. When do you think we will have enough data for machine learning to really come to the fore?
I don't know. I think that's gonna I don't have a good estimation on that. It'll probably be a while, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't think when you go to AU and they show you the machine learning for fabrication and manufacturing, that's a little bit different beast. When an owner wants a building a certain way or makes a design change, they want it that way, and I don't know that machine learning is quite where it needs to be just yet for our industry. I could be wrong, but it's ever changing. Every day there's something new that comes out. There's a new process that's in place. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it.
Good. And that sort of stuff, it's coming, but as you say, it might be further down the line. So BIM in 5 years, what's it going to look like, Chad?
That's another very good question. But I think we're just going to have to continue to learn and keep a pulse on what's going on, and figure out what works within our process, right? We'll make sure that the processes are in place, and then find a tool that fits that, and not just, we have to continue to not be distracted by the shiny new object out there, and just focus on, what improves our processes, what makes a better product and a smoother process for our owners. I feel like I'm dodging the question, but I honestly don't know. 5 years ago when you would have asked me this, I would have known that we would have been doing the things we're doing now.
Yeah, because it seems like drones, spot the dog, laser scanning, 3D printing. It's all pretty exciting and good. But as you say, what are the shiny things and the toys, and what are the real functional things that are helping us build better buildings for lower costs, mitigating risks? What do you think are the real value adds when it comes to a client?
So, for us, we try to mitigate our risk and try to mitigate that through, the use of drones and through laser scanners, documenting our processes with 360-degree cameras. And a lot of people, that have got experience in this field might be listening to this and going, well, we've been doing that for years. And that's true. Our company is like, I think you ask anybody, we're a little bit behind, the big boys. But that's where we are. We try to get things in place that help mitigate our risk, whether it's, VR, we're looking at VR right now for some of our safety, so that we can help, train our guys before they go out on a job site about, hey, what do you look for? How do you look for damaged equipment? How do you look for, what size lanyard you need in case you fall off this edge, those kinds of things. So,
that's exciting.
I think a lot of what we're doing is trying to help mitigate our risk, and improve our processes at the same time.
Brilliant. Love it. That to me is real VR is unbelievable. If you can walk in, give a client a headset and say, this is what your building's going to be like, this is how it's going to be built, or even better, a safety director or VP, and say, listen, this is how we're going to build it, have a look at it, walk through it. Do you see any major red flags that we can kind of we can put a stop to? I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really feel like we could make tremendous progress in is safety, with the help of the VDC. And exactly what you mentioned. I want to be able to create a 3D model, or get a 3D model from an architect if it's available. Put our safety guy in there and let him do a virtual walk of the building and go, oh, hey, we need a handrail over there. We need to store our, flammable stuff over there, or, looks like we need a guardrail up on the third floor when we're working here. Those are the types of things where I think that the VR can really come in useful. And we go back to what we've been using it for years. We put the client in there and say, hey, this is what your lobby is going to look like of your hotel. That has value. Don't get me wrong, but I think I think we're trying to make that transition to move it into the safety side of things, and try to train our people so that we pre-plan safe environments for our people.
Brilliant. Love it. So Chad, this is all well and good, and it sounds like stressful stuff. What is the getaway for you? What do you do to relax?
Well, I have 3 kids that are actively involved in sports. My daughter's a softball player. My boys play hockey. So we're constantly on the road for something, sitting at a ball field, sitting in an ice rink, freezing our fannies off. But me personally, you know, I go out and I do woodworking. I take things, I build things or restore, you know, furniture or whatever it might be, create, you know, art. I mean, that to me is my relaxing time. My neighbor saw me out on July 4th, you know, working on something for my mother-in-law. He's like, "You're not supposed to be working today." I'm like, "Hey man, this isn't work to me. This is me relaxing. You know, I'd rather be doing this than sitting in front of a TV, you know, watching something." So
yeah, absolutely.
That's me.
We've all got our therapeutic ideas. Good, I like that. Thank you very much. One last thing before we go, because we talked a little bit about this off air at the very beginning. It's the whole working from home. And now, obviously, you're still working from home due to COVID. How have you found working from home, and what sort of future do you see for BIM, VDC, estimating, pre-construction?
Yeah, so, you know, at first it was a little challenging because, you know, I got quarantined the same day my kids got quarantined. So my wife and I found ourselves taking some grades over again while we were trying to do work. But it's a challenge, don't get me wrong, but I think that this has quickly proven that you do have the capabilities, and you know, and you can still remain productive from working from home. So I think, you know, the construction industry has historically been, you know, the old school mentality, like, you know, 9 to 5, you know, and this and that. So, but I do think that this has opened up the doors for some flexibility in that. I can't say that we would work 100% from home if things were normal or go back to normal. But I think this does open the door for some flexibility when it comes to that. And I think you're going to see more and more of that in the future, you know, even when we come out on the other side of this thing, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think there'll be a meet in the middle. I mean, prior to this, we were all working in the office for a ridiculous amount of hours, depending on projects, obviously. But to go from that to working from home completely, obviously you can't really judge it of COVID, because like you, I've got small children, 4 and 2, and trying to work in the house I just can't do it. I just could not do it. There's no way that I can turn to my 4-year-old when I'm working and she wants to play and I'm going, no, I have to work.
Yeah.
I just got to get involved. I'm a sucker for it. I just enjoy my kids too much. But there is going to be flexibility. There's going to be good things come out of it. But and I get it all the time. Candidates ringing me up going, listen, I've worked from home now for 3 months. I love it. I'm more productive. I can see that. I said, wait, do it for 24 months, maybe a little bit longer. It's you need to be interacting with people. You need to be communicating with people. You need to be able to pick people's brains right away. But there will be flexibility in that. So hopefully we see that over the next couple of years coming out and kind of be ironed out.
And I'm also finding it difficult to disconnect, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm starting, you know, work earlier, and I typically end up working a little later. So I'm finding that difficult to disconnect. Whereas when I was in the office, you know, I'd get in my car and I'd head home and I was off the clock. You know, I might take a phone call or two in the car, but when I got home, you know, for the most part, I wasn't working. And then now I'm just finding that a little bit more difficult to put that delineation between work and family, you know.
100%, yeah. And there's no doubt about it. They have to be separate to enjoy each of them as to its maximum. That you've got to separate them. I totally agree with you.
Absolutely.
Good man, Chad. Well, listen, fascinating chat. Thank you very much for this. Is going to be part of our BIM VDC series. This is the 5th one, so we've had some brilliant leaders, of which you were one of them. So I want to thank you very much from the guys here at Preconstruction Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.